The Elephants Upstairs. I'm a long-time Let's Not Meet reader, but this is my first post. I've actually thought about posting this story for a while now, but I finally got the time, numbly bored at work right now, to do it. It's kinda long, so bear with me. When I was growing up in the 90s, my dad owned a small computer software company. It certainly wasn't Apple or anything. He'd sold DOS software to companies to help them manage inventory, track sales, etc. But since it did a decent business every year, he went to CES in Vegas, leaving my mom, sister, and I alone for a few days. Other than that, he rarely traveled on business. We lived in Florida back then, by the way, so although CES is in January, it was still fairly warm outside while he was gone. This will be a little important later on. Another bit of exposition. My mom is flat out paranoid. She raised us to be afraid of every person, and especially every man on the street. She's an extraordinarily bright person, PhD and all, but she absorbed all these bad old days kind of messages from the 70s and 80s, when crime rates were skyrocketing, about masked intruders and teenage gangs and rampant carjackings. It took me until this year, as a 24-year-old, to realize that I immediately lock the doors when I get in a car, because mom did it religiously when we were growing up, to prevent potential carjackings, you know? There's some foundation for excessive caution, to be fair, but she took it a bit far. Anyways, that's all the rising mishmash into which one night converges. So, it's maybe the second night that dad is gone, around 8:30. I'm 8 and my sister is 14 years old. My mom is watching TV in the den downstairs, and my sister and I are playing upstairs. I remember the time pretty well because it was nearing my 9 p.m. bedtime. I don't really remember what game we were playing. We were just sort of running around being jackasses, while my mom's voice cuts through the clamor. "You girls cut it out!" she yells up at us, then presumably returns to the den to resume watching Sex and the City. My sister Lauren suggests that we go downstairs to the playroom and watch TV. Well, she doesn't really suggest, we just do it, because she is a teenager and I'm 8. The playroom is right next to the den, with a pocket door separating them. But when we go through the den to reach it, mom is gone. We're puzzled for a second, but then we hear the toilet flush. She's in the bathroom, so we go into the playroom. When we get there, Lauren decides we should play Sorry instead of watching TV. We settle down and start playing quietly for a little while. Then we hear the commotion upstairs. It sounds like several people are up there running around, thudding all over the place. Lauren wonders aloud for a second if mom is up there looking for us, unaware that we came down to the playroom and running around in full paranoid panic mode trying to find us. Lauren gets up and walks to the half-open pocket door to go get mom and calm her down. She just reaches the doorway when we hear mom's voice in the den. Yell. "You girls stop right now! You sound like a herd of elephants up there!" I join my sister at the door as she quietly says, "Mom, we're right here." Mom's head snaps towards us, and her eyes widen. We all freeze. The commotion, which really does sound like elephants stampeding upstairs, gets even louder, right above our heads. My mom, sister, and I stand frozen and silent for what feels like a long time, but actually is probably only a few seconds, since mom acts quickly, especially in situations like this. But for what felt like an eternity, we just stood there, listening to the footsteps pound above us. What always spooks me is that they were voiceless. There must have been multiple people in the house, but they spoke not a word to each other, at least that we could hear. Mom grabs her cell phone, giant as it was, and herds us to the playroom closet, as far away from the stairs as we can get. The steps above us are thudding and frantic as ever. In there, she calls the 911, and they tell her to get out of the house. We run to the patio door in the back and around to the front, where multiple cruisers are already arriving. It was warm outside. January, but in Florida, I remember, and I remember standing out there for a couple hours. They never found out who was upstairs, but when we looked at the police photos later, we saw that everything had been ripped apart. Drawers were opened. Closets are spilling out their bedding. Shampoo bottles and medicines are strewn on the floor in front of the open sink cabinets in the bathroom. The police said that the intruders came in the unlocked window in my parents' bedroom after climbing a tree next to the house. They said it was probably gypsies traveling through the area, and though they took fingerprints, they never captured the people who broke in. The really weird part is that nothing was taken. Not a thing. None of my mom's jewelry, which was in the top drawer they ripped open and barely concealed under some clothes, no TVs, no radios, nothing was missing. And they never came down the stairs to get us either, so they weren't going out of their way to harm anyone. I wonder to this day exactly what they were looking for. After my dad got back, my parents had a long discussion, which my mom won. An alarm system was installed the next week. I can't remember if my mom's worrying got worse after this, but it certainly didn't get better. So, multiple terrifying home invaders straight out of my paranoid mom's worst nightmares. Let's not meet. Long trip home gets weird. So my boyfriend and two of our other friends and I went on our annual trip to New York City in January a few years ago, and everything was great and we had a great time. On our way back from the city, we were traveling home to West Virginia. We were driving through Pennsylvania. We started hearing weird noises from the engine in my friend's car, and then we just coasted to a stop right outside of Allentown, PA. We were all exhausted from late nights and early mornings in the city, and this was the last thing we wanted to deal with. Regardless, we called AAA and sat in the car joking and laughing about how this is just our luck. It was probably around 9:30 p.m. About 20 minutes later, a huge truck pulls up behind us. A guy gets out and comes to the window asking what we think was wrong. We asked if he was from AAA and he grunted, yeah. He was a scruffy older guy, but he was really tall and seemed to be in shape. We told him what happened, and he said he might have something in his truck that could help, and that he'll be right back. So he goes to his truck, and we're all talking about how weird he didn't just start towing us somewhere. We figured we would have to get a hotel and everything, and didn't expect the car to be fixed within a few minutes of AAA arriving. The guy comes back and says he didn't have what he needed in his truck. He then suggested one of us, we were all 4 college-age guys, come to his truck with him and go back to his garage and get what he needed and come back. We all awkwardly looked at each other and kind of rambled on about how we didn't want to leave anyone because we only had one charged phone between us and we need to talk to parents, blah 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 blah, starting to get a little nervous. Then my phone starts ringing, and I don't recognize the number, but I pick it up thinking it might be one of the other guy's parents. The guy on the line says, "Hey, this is so-and-so from AAA and I can't find you guys." My heart stopped. There is a guy from AAA here right now. Nope, my garage is the only one in the area that works with AAA, so I don't know who you're talking to. Where are you guys? I see the real AAA guy, his lights driving on the other side of the interstate, and tell him this. He said he'd be over in just a minute and not to get out of the car. So the guys overheard me talking to this guy, obviously, and we were all freaking out not knowing what to do about the guy who keeps trying to help us. He comes back up to the car. "If you guys want to get this car fixed, one of you have to come with me. I only have room for one, but I can't carry all the equipment by myself." We all kind of sit there scared shitless because this guy essentially lied to us and wants to take one of us with him in his huge truck to his garage. While this guy is trying to convince us, I see another set of bright lights pull up to the side of the road with us. It's an actual tow truck, so I know it's the guy I just spoke to. Immediately, the scruffy truck driver bolts back to his truck and starts driving away immediately. The rest of the trip was uneventful. We had to crash at our friend's grandma's abandoned house that was like 100 miles away, and during one of those huge snowstorms we had in like 2009 or 2010. But I am sure that that guy wanted one of us to go with him, and that we would never see the light of day again. It's really creepy thinking about it again. I'm not Maria. This will be my first time posting, and I figured it was about time. Something about me must attract strange people, as I had way more than my fair share of strange encounters in my life. So without further ado, let's begin. This happened fairly recently, actually back in January. It was icy and cold outside, and I was just walking from my car to my apartment building. It was quite a ways away, 3 blocks-ish. I was just about to cross the road when it happened. I was checking both directions of the street, to make sure no cars were coming when I noticed a big, and I mean really big, dude coming down the street. He was very underdressed for it being winter. He wore a tank top and a pair of jeans. I didn't pay much attention to him before I crossed the road. Then out of nowhere, I heard a loud yell. Maria! I looked back to see the man crossing the road, now running. And when I say running, I mean it. He came right at me, and I, panicking, started to run myself. At this point, there was less than 2 blocks separating me from my apartment. He shouted Maria a few more times, and just to let you know, my name isn't Maria. To my utter horror, I felt a hand wrap around my wrist and jarred me to a halt. The strange man had caught up to me. His face looked red and tear-stained, and he was glaring at me. Although on the inside, I was screaming and terrified, on the outside, I managed to stay as calm as possible. Very forcefully, I said to him, "Let go of my arm right now." And thank God he did. I took a step back, moving away from him. When he growled at me, he growled. Alright, that freaked me out a lot, so I took another step away. "Don't you fucking dare walk away from me, Maria!" "I am not Maria," I said as forcefully as I could manage. "I will tear that braid right out of your goddamn head, don't lie to me." This time, I took several steps back and I looked him right in the eye and said very loudly, "Leave me alone." And with that I turned and started walking away as fast as I could, continually looking over my shoulder. He did not move from the spot. As soon as I rounded the next corner, I booked it straight to my apartment. Crying, underdressed man who thinks I'm Maria. Let's not meet again. I probably would be dead right now. I have this posted on No Sleep, but it seems more fitting here. So I've mentioned sharing the story in a comment or two on here. That is one that opened my eyes to true fear. You know how we flip through the channels while comfortably laying on the couch and settle for an episode of Law & Order or Criminal Minds? You know, you see the gruesome case play out and think, whoa, this is a good one. Have you ever wondered what it'd feel like if you were the victim? In January of 2014, I went on a study abroad program to Australia. At the time, we were staying in Sydney, and most of our group was heading out that night to Paka, Sydney for a little or a lot of dance fun, and I, being completely oblivious to how fun that stinking place is, decided to call in an early night and stay at the hotel. The next morning, everyone dragged in around 5 a.m., and I couldn't sleep much past their drunken entrance. So soon after, I decided to head out to the side street we infamously called Burberry Street, since the Burberry store there offered free Wi-Fi. Now call me stupid for being a 5'3" girl heading out to hang out on a foreign street by myself, but it was a beautiful, crisp Sunday morning, and the streets themselves were clean and quiet. I felt no danger ever while walking around that area. So there I sat on the bench in front of Burberry with headphones in, while FaceTiming my then boyfriend. After a few moments, I noticed a young man, maybe around 28 years old, had sat down on the bench across from me. And me being completely caught up in conversation, I hadn't even noticed him or that he was staring at me. The funny thing was, he had a huge grin on his face as if we were some long-lost best friends. I just politely smiled back, then went straight back to FaceTiming. A few minutes passed, and the young man stood up and walked in front of my peripheral vision, and stood there anxiously stepping back and forth from left to right foot like a child, waiting to see their birthday surprise, all the while still grinning. This is when I assessed his appearance. He was dressed in black from head to toe. He even had black hair slicked back really nice, and had black eyes and pale skin. I looked up at him and furrowed my brow out of curiosity, and this is when he held his right hand up and seductively bit his knuckles at me. At this point, I started to feel that fight or flight instinct, and stood up and started slowly backing away, keeping the man to my front and the beginning of the street to my back. He smiled even larger and started to mimic my movements, backing away while still watching me. Finally, he turned around and walked towards the end of a street, but kept looking back and grinning at me over his shoulder. I turned around too at this point and quickly whispered to my then boyfriend what was going on, and that I was going to lose Wi-Fi really quickly, because I was hightailing it out of there. As soon as I reached the end of Burberry Street and back to the main street, I sighed in relief and looked both ways before crossing. And to my surprise, the man had caught up to me and was standing to my left on the other side of the street, watching me while talking to someone inside a darkly tinted black car. I freaked out and took the right and began power walking towards the nearest coffee shop, only to find out that the lights were on, but the doors weren't unlocked yet. When I looked back, the man was casually walking at the same speed, car following and him staying about a half a block behind me, only now he wasn't smiling. At this point, I started running, and damn, you always think you could run fast with adrenaline, right? Well, when fear overcomes adrenaline, it's a different story. My legs felt like jello, and every step felt as if bricks were tied to the bottom of my feet. I looked back quickly, and that's when I saw this guy right on my tail. And that is when he reached out. He yanked my arm violently. I lost balance, and smack! My feet flew out from under me, and I landed on the concrete in this order: elbows, palms, face, and then the rest of my body. I tried to get up as soon as I hit the ground, but everything was dizzy and in slow motion. Thankfully, a nearby restaurant owner was unlocking the restaurant's door and saw what happened and rushed at us while shaking his fist at the man. The black car gunned it down the street, and the man smirked and held his hand up, slowly backing away and then turning around and walking away swiftly. At this point, I started shaking violently and crying out of fear, and then eventually, pain. The restaurant owner kindly rushed me into a shop and sat me down at a table with a pack of ice and soon a cup of coffee. Eventually, the police took a report, but nothing could be done. I refused to go to the hospital, and thankfully, it was only a couple of bad bruises and skinned elbows. To this day, I still don't know the man's intentions, but I'm 100% positive that they weren't good ones. If that restaurant owner hadn't been coming into a shop early that day, then I don't know where I would be. So, creepy man dressed in black. Let's not meet ever again. The Mountain Man. Let's go back to January 17, 2014. My girlfriend had planned the whole birthday from the morning to evening. I was a junior in college at the time, and my first gift from her was a fruit basket. I love fruit. Anyways, I get through my classes, and she said our first stop was a surprise restaurant in downtown Denver. It was a Mongolian grill or something of that nature. It was so good. After that, we walked around downtown having the greatest time. It was about 7 to 8-ish, and she asked if I would rather go to the ice rink or to a surprise location. I wanted the surprise location. Well, the surprise location was Lookout Mountain in Golden, Colorado. I'd been there once before, but it was when I was a senior in high school. We got to the very top and got out of the car around 9:30-ish. It was extremely windy outside, but we wanted to sit and look at the full moon in the city of Denver. It was beautiful. We hid behind some huge boulders, but eventually the wind chill was ruining our experience, so we decided to go back to the car. We sat there for a while, until the sport car gang came and ruined our time alone, so we left down the other side of the mountain to find another spot while we were still being able to see the city in full moon. We went down the winding road and finally found the perfect spot to be alone and still have a great view. It was on a ridgeway, midway up the mountain. It was now 10:45, 11-ish. We sat there talking about how beautiful the city lights looked, and the moon just made it better. Cars zoomed by for another hour or so. We finally were alone with no interruptions. My girlfriend started to play some music, and she put old Britney Spears songs on. Blah, talk about lame. Well, now it's around 12:30-ish to 1 a.m. We do what usual couples do, kiss and whatnot, but nothing too crazy. We suddenly hear this weird grunt noise. It sounded like a human, but we weren't sure. We hear it once, and it was one short sound. We both stopped and looked at each other and confirmed that it was not the wind, but maybe it was an animal. We shrugged it off and continued being couples. My girlfriend felt uneasy after a while, and she wanted to leave. I told her, I'll be alright, let's just stay a little longer. Bad mistake. I too started to feel uneasy as she played this Britney Spears song. I'm not sure from that to this day. We still didn't leave, and my girlfriend hopped over to my seat and reclined the chair. You know, doing what couples do still, nothing crazy. My girlfriend then screams her head off. I immediately ask her, what'd you see? She said there was a man right there in the window. Immediately I freaked out looking out the window, but I did not see anything. It was then that I told her to get in the driver's seat and drive. She reacted immediately and we took off. We got to the dorms and she never told me what she saw. I finally got it out of her and she said she saw a dark, slim face with long, scruffy hair looking down right at me from the back passenger window. When she screamed, the man didn't run away. He kept staring, and then he slowly backed up while crouching, and then he was gone. I investigated her car and noticed that this person had been creeping on us for a while. The condensation from the man's face made this oval print in her window, and there were drip marks. To top it all off, this person had left dirt prints from the back passenger door. He was crouched down looking in on us. Who knows how long he was there for and what his intentions were. I'm glad he didn't see me freak out, because it would have given him a motive to attack. I'll never forget this birthday, so to the creepy man on Lookout Mountain, let's not meet again. Ringing doorbell at 4:30 a.m., playing music out loud, throwing trash. This is my second time posting here. The first time I posted, I just wrote about some minor thing that happened to my mom years ago. Now what I'm about to write about started happening a week ago. I live with my parents and 24-year-old sister. I'm female, 19 years old. We live in a very nice and quiet block. Nothing ever happens here. Just last week at around 1:30 a.m., someone in an old Hummer pulled over in our driveway and blasted a song you would typically dedicate to a person you are really infatuated with, but apparently doesn't like you back. My parents and I did not hear this, just my sister. She saw the old Hummer through one of her windows. The next day, she tells us all about it. We brush it off, thinking it may have been a guy that liked her, or something like that. I sort of discarded myself, since the only guy who knows where I live was a guy I was dating from a couple months ago, and I was very much into him, but he started dating his ex again, which is his loss, I guess. I also thought about a guy I was really good friends with on my first semester in college. He developed very strong feelings for me, but couldn't stand me around guys that he wasn't friends with himself. After a huge fight over this, in which he told me I was dead to him, he would follow me around school, stare at me all the time, talk about me all the time about how he was in love with me and hated me at the same time. But I never told him where I lived, and none of my friends would ever tell him. They're all really freaked out by him. The only thing that makes me think he doesn't have anything to do with this is the fact that he loves hard rock music and hates pretty much everything else. The song, according to my sister, had a Latin dance song ring to it. So, he's kinda clear, I guess. Anyways, no harm done, right? We thought. Yeah, whoever that was played some music. Big deal, right? On the next few days, our doorbell has been played with at around 4:30, 5:30, and 7 a.m. They ring 3 times and leave. All of us have been too groggy to run to the windows and see who is doing it. This obviously has been annoying for us, but just yesterday, they did something that left us baffled. They rang the doorbell at 4:30 a.m. 3 times. My mom actually got up quickly and tried to see through the windows what the hell was up. It was still dark outside, and she saw nothing and no one. Now, we have a housekeeper that comes at around 8 a.m. I was still kind of asleep, but I heard our housekeeper talking rapidly with my mom and dad about some trash outside. When I woke up, my dad told me someone grabbed our trash and dumped it on our front door. They even smeared dog shit on our door as well. I started racking my brains, trying to think of who could be doing this, but we are at a very quiet suburban family. We keep to ourselves all the time. Then a girl that lives by herself a couple houses next to us told my mom this morning someone unlocked her car a few days ago, but didn't take anything, even though she had left a credit card inside by mistake that night. We're not sure if this is genuinely against us, or if this is someone that passes by our house very early in the morning on their way to work on foot, and just decides to fuck with people in general, you know? This may not be someone that is meaning to hurt us, but it still really just freaks me out. We're leaving for Los Angeles tomorrow, and our house will be pretty much alone the entire time. My aunt and uncle will be dropping by here from time to time to check on things, but still, Creepy sound tech. First post. Sorry if the formatting doesn't go right. Anyways, I was about 15 to 16 years old at the time and was working on a musical production with my high school's theater program. I was typically the sound tech for normal shows, but musicals are complicated, so I worked alongside a pro for those. When I first met this guy I'd be working with, I knew he was a little off, but figured, hey, most theater guys I know are. Keep in mind, this guy was late 30s with a wife and young children. He was funny and nice enough at first. We exchanged numbers in case either of us had questions. He started to randomly text me to chat, which I found odd but still made me feel cool. Since I was young and didn't quite think much of it, he'd bring me and a few of his other tech Starbucks or sodas for rehearsals. Then, his texts started getting more and more inappropriate. When that happened, I'd ignore them and chalk it up to him being socially odd. We had a huge choir, concert talent show type thing one day instead of rehearsals, and he had been also hired on for that. A few days before this concert, he'd said something I can't remember now that made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, so I asked to just be the stage manager that night, to which the choir director had no problem with. During the night of the concerts, 2 girls performed "Hit Me Baby One More Time," and he texted me, "I let you hit me baby one more time." I freaked. He then sent me inappropriate stuff before, but most of it he played it off as a joke or having a different meaning, something like that. My friend, who's a take-no-shit, fiery redhead, saw it and freaked out as well. She called the choir director over and showed her. The choir director asked if she could take my phone for a minute, which of course I didn't say no to, and she asked if I'd shown anyone else yet. Told her no, not yet, and that he'd said inappropriate things before. She came back later and asked me to come to her office, as well as my friend, and our light tech who was big brother-like, and knew what was going on. The creepy sound guy came in and naturally my oh shit sense kicked in, and I refused to look at him, afraid of what I might see. But I could feel my face just burning. He apologized for being a creep and making me uncomfortable and went on his way. He had already been paid for a musical, so he stayed on, but was under constant watch by staff members, and was never alone with any students again. After the musical, I never saw or heard from him again, though I always wish I had, so I could get his company's name or something like that, and let his boss know he shouldn't be around functions involving younger people. Lucky for me, our light tech, who I believe 17 at the time all this happened, was hired by our school district to work a teacher back to school event that following summer. This had all gone down in January. Turns out a guy he worked with at that event worked for the same company as Creeper. Turns out the creep had gotten fired after all, and his wife had divorced him. The Acorn Man. In January of 2009, my family and I moved 8 miles to an old brick farmhouse near the middle of a small town. The house happens to have a huge ancient-looking oak tree in the front yard, close to the relatively busy street. 2 autumns ago, or in other words, the autumn of 2013, my dad came home to a man in our front yard, just sort of wandering around. My dad got out of his truck and started shouting at the guy, angry that he was on our property, especially since there was a chance my brother and I could have gone off at the bus to this guy in our yard. "I wanted your acorns," the guy said, picking up one of the obsessively large acorns that the old oak tree bears every year or so. My dad declined and told him to leave. Last autumn, I was sitting in my room watching some show after school with my headphones in, as I usually do. Then my younger brother came and I switched off my phone and asked what he wanted. "There was an old man at the door," he said. This intrigued me. "Old man?" "Yeah, he said he wanted our acorns. I told him to leave since Mom and Dad aren't home. Acorn Man has returned. He's gone now, though," my brother stated. "We haven't seen him at all this past winter, but as my brother informed me, he said he'll be back to ask for acorns again, spreading discomfort to all he interacts with. Acorn Man, here's a tip. Fuck off." Stalked. Long story and names are changed. I was a 20-year-old Chinese female living in the inner city at this time. Apologies for giant wall of text. A while back, around January of 2013, I was returning to university after a break. I'm hanging out with some friends, Nick, best friend, pretty much my brother, Logan, Nick's brother, Todd, good friend, and some other people. There's this black guy there named Jermaine. I can tell something was off, but I don't know what. But overall, he seemed like a nice guy, just a little off. Later, my bestie, Nick, tells me Jermaine had schizophrenia and bipolar. That's all Nick knows, so there's no more to it. Fast forward to this past summer, I'm hanging out at the local cafe and outside for a smoke. Fucking anti-smoking laws. Anyways, he wants to bum. So no problem, people always bum cigs off me, no biggie. Later, I'm done studying, summer class, I went to my bus stop. He asked for a hug. Side note, I don't like hugs. I was physically abused as an infant, so I'm just a very cautious person. He insists, so I give him a hug. I figure maybe he's having a bad day or something. Now, I understand people go through shit. So this semester, I'm at school with my friends. Most of my friends are Asian, so we'll call it the Asian table. And he's there with Nick's brother, Logan. I think nothing of it. Logan and Jermaine leave. Being a typical college student, I remember I forgot to do an assignment. I had to the campus library and get it all fixed up. On my way out, guess who was there? Jermaine. I'm confused, like why is he in the library and why he doesn't even go here? But oh well, I'm heading to my professor's office and he follows me. I tell him I'm good and he doesn't have to worry, but he insists, so I let him. I drop off my papers and it's awkward but good. A few minutes later, I got an invite from Logan to collab on a project. We both make music together. I get ready to leave. I figure since it's nice out, I'm going to walk. Jermaine decides to follow me. I don't want to tell him no given his mental health history, so I let him accompany me. It's a very awkward silent walk. We cross a bridge over a river, and Jermaine is flexing as if he's going to hurt someone. I move to the side close to the cars, so that way if he pushes me, a car will stop. If he pushes me over the bridge, I'm dead. Eventually we arrive at Nick and Logan's. Nick is at work, Logan is in a pissy mood and doesn't want to hang. I'm annoyed, but whatever. I'll just go home. Jermaine asks Logan and I for hugs. I don't want to give them, but given his aggression, I give him a hug. Logan doesn't want one, but Jermaine begs and pleads that he needs it, so Logan gives him one. I'm on my way out and Jermaine tries to follow me. I ask Logan to get him to stay. Thankfully, Logan agrees. I thought that was the end of it. Nope. The next day, he's creeping at my table and creeping on my female friends. He tries to follow me around, but I sneak in a students-only section and finally get away. I try to file a restraining order against Nick's wishes, but the cops don't care unless he hits me or something. Oh, note, I had my friend Todd talk to him, and it magically stopped. Stereotypical Greyhound Pimp. I've taken Greyhound buses several times to different places. The account I'm going to detail took place while I was taking buses home from Wisconsin to Oklahoma in January a couple years ago. I had ridden with my best friend in a moving truck she rented all the way from Oklahoma to Wisconsin, where all her family had moved a couple years prior. I decided to buy a bus ticket instead of a plane ticket to save some money, even though it would be a 2-day affair. Taking the bus for any length of time can be very precarious. Ask anyone who has ridden one for a long trip. Sure, some buses have electrical outlets for laptops, screen showing the movie of the driver's choice, and maybe even Wi-Fi, but sometimes your fellow passengers can completely cancel out the comfort found in these amenities. We had stopped to pick up and drop off passengers somewhere in Michigan, I want to say. I stayed on the bus with the other connecting riders and was sitting there messing with my phone when the most flamboyantly pimpalicious dude struts on the bus. He was wearing a 4-length brown fur coat and matching hat, sunglasses, and dress shoes. I don't remember if he actually had a cane or not, but that's besides the point. He was swaggering down the aisle, and I hoped he would just keep going past me. He blobs down in the seat directly behind me, and at this point, I'm texting my best friend. A pimp literally just got on my bus. What the fuck? I'm getting a kick out of it until I hear him say, "Do you think my number work on that phone?" I let a kind of strangled laugh. Doubted. "Oh, you doubt it, huh? I see. He waits. I text. We start up on our trip again. "Excuse me, I mean no disrespect, but do you think my number work on that phone?" I don't think so, sorry." Alright. When we stopped for a smoke break, I stood as far away from the pimp as I could and chatted with another woman while we all smoked in the freezing ass cold. He glanced at me kind of amused. I switched seats when we got back on the bus, and I think he took the hint. He didn't try to talk to me at the next station, and after I switched buses, I didn't see him again, really. This wasn't really one of the creepiest experiences, but it did kind of scare me, because human trafficking is a serious problem, especially through Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. It freaked me out at the time, but when I got home, it became one of my favorite stories of travel to tell people.